Answerly viewers, this is our final review of Fangirl by Rowell. So I loved this book most of the time. If you were watching my discussion videos as I was reading through it, I mostly had nothing but amazing things to say and all the feels and all of that, but now that I'm done with it, I have some mixed feelings. I think if I were to give the book an overall rating, I would give it like a 6 or 7, which is really, really harsh, I know. Okay, let me explain myself. If I were to rate this book based on different aspects of it, I would have very different opinions. If I were to rate this book on feeling and vibe and like tone and like the cool things that they did with fan fiction and internet culture, I would give it like a 9. Like, I think this book excelled at that extremely well, and I really enjoyed it. It made me feel a lot of things that I hadn't felt since I was in high school and I was writing fan fiction and I was in that world and that community. And the characters felt very real for the most part, and I just liked that a couple of the things that happened came out of left field, and so I couldn't really predict them. Everything with Kath and Levi's relationship, I totally bought the red herring with Nick, and then all of a sudden when we realized that Levi was into Kath, that really took me for a surprise. I think I only saw it coming about a chapter ahead. I didn't predict it from the very beginning. I liked Reagan as a character, I liked the dad as a character, mostly liked Ren as a character, but what really killed this book for me was that I just didn't like Kath. I think for a lot of the book I assumed that it would get better and that Kath would learn some lesson and that she would grow as a person, and I just don't totally feel like that ever happened. I touched on this a lot in my final discussion video, but I think that I don't know if this was like the author's personal views getting muddled in the book or if Kath was just like a huge stick in the mud, but I felt like Kath was extremely self-righteous about everyone else's bad behavior, but never had to address her own. I mean, obviously Kath wasn't out getting shit-faced drunk, and she wasn't like having mental breakdowns that put her in the hospital like her dad, and she didn't abandon her family like her mom, and she didn't like plagiarize someone really like Nick. I know she got in trouble for plagiarism, but that was a different situation. But overall, it was a lot of Kath's bad decisions and bad lifestyle choices that put her in the situations that she was in, particularly with not writing her story. And it really bothered me how this thing that was building up with her not writing her story for her fiction writing class didn't really amount to anything, because Kath wasn't gonna do it, but she lied and said she was, but then she wasn't, and then ultimately she finally just sat down and just wrote it. And I don't feel like that was that important. I don't know, I felt like there was this tone that Kath didn't know how to write anything that wasn't Simon and Baz, and how she didn't have anything going on, she didn't feel like she could like muster up her own original characters, but I got the sense, and maybe I was just reading into this book in a way that the author didn't intend, but I got the sense that she was going to realize at some point that the things that she was doing at college that had kept her from finishing her fanfic on time in the first place was her creating her own story and like living her own life, and Levi and Reagan and all of these people were the characters in her story, and that she would realize that and then be able to use that inspiration to write her story. But it ended up just being about her mom, I guess, and it was her writing about her life, but she just finally sat down and just did it, and of course she was good at that too. And I thought it was a little cheap that, I don't know, the plotline with Nick and him copying her felt a little tacked on, and so when she ended up winning the prize at the end of the book, I don't know if I felt like she totally had earned that, personally. I felt like there was no justice the opposite way, because Kath was making equally bad decisions as everyone else in her life, but I felt like Kath at the end of the book got to just sort of be like, see everyone, you shouldn't have been drinking, you should have told me that you needed help, Dad. Mom, you're just a jerk. I really hated that her mom was just a kind of a bad person, because another big part of this book that sort of amounted to nothing was that Kath didn't want to let her mom back in at all, and when she finally does see her, her mom's just kind of a loser. And so I also felt there where Kath just got to be like, well, I was right, told you so. So I think what really bothered me about this book was that there felt like there was a lack of growth for the main character. And I think honestly, even though many of the other characters ended up in the hospital and she did not, I actually kind of feel like Kath needed the growth the most. And I think it like sort of happened subtly under the surface. I don't think that Kath ever got to have any sort of like big realization about it. And like Levi is such a great character and like dropped everything for her, and I felt like that wasn't totally given back. She read him stories and stuff, of course, but I felt like even though Kath helped a lot of people, she was maybe the one who needed to change the most, and it didn't happen. This has been a long rant about what I didn't like about this book, and again, that's like it's a big part of the book if you don't like the main character very much, and I think it's a little flawed. But I really did like the book. I enjoyed all of it, and it wasn't really until the end when I realized that Kath wasn't gonna have this life-altering realization about herself that I really started to get bothered. The rest of the book was amazing, and I loved it. I loved learning about Simon and Baz. I actually, at the beginning of the book, didn't really like when the fanfic and the stories, the chapters from Simon Snow were in the book, but as we went on, I started to really like it a lot more. It was hard for me right away because I was very much into Harry Potter fanfiction. I didn't really do other fanfiction, so reading about Simon was kind of boring for me, but then I started to feel the enthusiasm that Kath feels about it, and I started to relate it more to my own experience, and I really enjoyed those scenes after a while, but also could have been because I was just tired of Kath being self-righteous. But I don't like talking bad about a book that I really enjoyed, because like I said, I would still give this book like a 7 out of 10 overall, because the other characters are great. I just wish that, you know, those scenes where Kath was in talking to her writing teacher about her story and just being so insufferable. Those conversations where Kath would just be like, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. And I think she talked to a couple other characters. She had a couple really excruciating conversations where she was just being so stubborn about being unwilling to try writing something else. And those were like the low points of the book for me. But I thought that they were really interesting, but I just thought they were going to be addressed and that Kath would recognize how ridiculous she was being and how destructive she was being to her own future as a sort of parallel to the destruction that Ren was causing herself. Anyway, I could rant about this all day. I really like the book. Despite my rants, I would definitely recommend it to people. I already have, in fact. All of my friends that I know that were into fan fiction, I have either already lent this book out and got it back because they read it so fast, or have just told to read. I would definitely recommend that you read it if you haven't and are somehow watching this video. I really think that the writing is fantastic and that what the author was trying to do with fan fiction is awesome, and I appreciate it. I'm definitely curious what you guys think. I want to know how the ending felt to you, if you were a little disappointed, or if it was actually okay for you. Maybe I'm just being hypercritical. Whatever. That's what these videos are for. Leave your comments down below, and I will let you know next week what book is next. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon.